Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Jewish Professionals Podcast, the JP Podcast. I'm Hillel Bainach.
And I'm Benjamin Winters, and we're students at Yeshiva University, just looking for some advice.
Our aim is to bring to you Jewish professionals from every industry to learn from their successes and failures, how they grew in their career and Jewish identity, and made a Kiddush Hashem along the way.
We hope you can apply what you learned through the lessons to your own life as they pass the torch to us, the next generation. We can't wait to go along this journey with you. This is the Jewish Professionals Podcast.
Woo! Welcome, everybody, to the first ever Jewish Professional Podcast, JPP Podcast. Ben, I'm excited.
I'm pumped. This is big time. This is big time over here. We have next to us Dean Strauss. He worked at American Airlines, New York Times, First National City Bank, Bank of New York, Citibank, American Express.
Right, everything. But most impressively, which I think you might have left out, is the current dean of Yeshiva University. And I think it's fitting, Ben, that our first guest really embodies what it means to be a Jewish professional in the workplace. So, Dean, thank you for making the trek.
And thank you for inviting me to be the first one on this podcast. I hope not the last one. I'll be back.
Oh, we'll have you back whenever you can make the walk.
I'd love to.
Wow. So, lead us off,
Dean, you've had a really impressive career. You worked in a bunch of corporations, as we mentioned, but your family has a fascinating story on how you guys even got to America in the first place. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Israel. Actually, my parents are German Holocaust survivors. They went to Palestine in 1935, obviously before I was born. And at that time, it was, rocks and British mandate. And my father, unfortunately, he came from a very, very well-to-do family in Germany, but they literally had to leave Germany the next morning, and they left everything. When you hear the expression with a shirt on his back, it's basically he left with a shirt on his back. He married my mom the night before because he had a visa to go he had to go as a couple. He couldn't go as a single guy. Anyway, they went there. He worked for the British mandate. He was a learned guy. He liked to learn. He liked to read. He was a brilliant guy. And thank God both of them lived until their mid-90s. But one of the things my dad his focus was not to succeed in business. And so from the age of 14, we came to Israel. And my sister was born, she's older than me. At 14, they decided to come to the United States. We came to New York City, literally with nothing. We didn't have anything. We moved into 151st Street and Broadway, Harlem. And I had to work. I didn't speak any English. I had to work from the day that I literally got off the boat to carry out orders to make money, not only for myself, but to feed my family.
How long was that boat ride? I mean, that must have been...
Well, let me tell you, it's funny you should ask. It's 2 weeks, one day, I think, in Greece someplace, but no stabilizers.
And this isn't, by the way, this isn't the kosher cruises that you see.
No Costa Rica out here.
No, this is a little, I shouldn't say sailboat. It was bigger than a sailboat. It was a little tiny boat, no stabilizer. And I have to tell you, went over the Mediterranean. It wasn't an easy ride. But
there was some rain outside, and you guys started.
I was fine. I remember my father wasn't doing too well, but I was fine.
Right, safe to say you don't get seasick.
No, I didn't get seasick. He did at the end. Actually, when we arrived in Brooklyn, that's the day he got seasick.
Wow. Wait, so you said like almost 13 years in Israel, in Palestine?
14.
14 years.
14 years. I was, I came here when I was 14, and obviously couldn't afford to go to any yeshiva high school. I mean, we didn't have anything. So I went to actually right up the street here to George Washington High School, where Henry Kissinger and a whole bunch of people, what's his name, Harry Belafonte, and a whole bunch of people went. I went to the high school. I did very, very well in the high school, and it's not because I was that smart, because the Israeli or the Jewish education system was far better than the American high school system, to be candid. And then I couldn't afford to go to Yeshiva University. And I went to City College. Wow. Spent 4 years in City College. German parents, when they have a son, they usually they want the son to be a doctor or an engineer.
Right.
And I didn't want to be a doctor, so I decided to be an engineer. And I did 4 years. I did very well. I had to work during that whole time. Unfortunately, unlike you guys who are very, very fortunate, you have a chevra here, you have friends that you're going to keep for life. I hate to admit it, but I don't have one friend from the university, because literally the minute that I finished my class, I had to go to work. Worked Motzei Shabbos, worked Sundays, worked holidays, worked every minute I was free. I had to work.
What kind of jobs were you doing?
All sorts, packing boxes, working as a busboy in a restaurant. I mean, whatever job came my way, I did it. I was in those days they had in the church, actually they had they ran bingos, and they were looking for people to give out, all the old ladies and the old men were there to give out the bingo cards and all that, and they paid us whatever they paid us at that time. So I did, seriously speaking, I did everything that I could do to make money, because I had to support myself. And my father did work. I don't want to imply that he didn't, but he was never a big breadwinner. And my mother worked too. So between the two of them, they finally moved up to 161st Street and Fort Washington Avenue, and I lived there. And I was fortunate enough to meet my current wife, whom I've been married for many, many, many years. So one of the better things I did in life is I'm still married to her. And I met her when I was 20, and we got married when I was 22, literally the day after I finished college. Wow. And we have 2 kids, we have 6 granddaughters, so it's been a good mishpucha, good life.
Amazing. Could you tell us that you said your jobs that you were working at the start were sort of packing those bags and bingo cards and everything? What's that feeling like, getting your first paycheck, especially coming? You didn't speak the language, the culture wasn't so, you weren't so used to it, and all of a sudden you had some money, and all of a sudden...
Well, there was excitement in a different sense than that I would have it today and you would have it today. The excitement was that basically I was able to take the money and go to the grocery store and buy milk and bread and help, feed my parents and myself, feed myself. So I was excited that I had the ability to work. And again, I did not speak English very well, but luckily I went to high school and I had to pick it up. So I picked it up pretty quickly. But it's different. You can't imagine it when you need to work to basically buy milk, bread, and put food on the table. But it was all good. It's all good. It worked out very well. I can't complain. I'm luckiest. I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world. I really am.
It's all about the positive attitude.
No, I feel it. No matter, anyway, I don't want to get into politics, but no matter what goes on, this is the greatest country in the world. It really is.
Amazing.
Wow. That's incredible to hear, just from the beginning and kind of the lessons you learned there. Do you think those lessons you carried with you once you went into the corporate world?
Yeah, I think many of the lessons I carry, but the key one is that you have to persevere. And if they throw you out of the front door, you come in the back door. I had to get a job. And many times I was, I walked into a grocery store, for example. In those days, it's not so prevalent now. Maybe it is here in New York. I don't know. I live in the suburbs. But where I lived in Harlem, there was a big supermarket. And, the elderly people, they came there and they bought food. And there were always young men lined up by the cash register to help them carry the food 1, 2, 3 blocks to their homes, and they got a tip. The supermarket didn't pay them. So I learned that what you got to do if you have to work and if you have to make a living, you got to do what you have to do it, and you can't be embarrassed. As long as you make a decent living, you don't steal and rob. So those lessons helped me through my first couple of jobs in the office, because I knew that I had to succeed. I couldn't be as picky as I might have been today.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Could you take us through that sort of corporate life progression, sort of how you even got into your first corporate job and sort of where you went from there?
So I told you I went to engineering school and graduated as an industrial engineer. Loved it for the 4 years. Took physics, took math, everything that I needed to do. I loved it, and that's a lesson we can talk about. And then I got a job with a railroad. It's actually the Metro was a former name of it, and I realized that I don't like it. I didn't like the work. It wasn't for me. But then I said to myself, I tried to rationalize, and I said, well, maybe it's the railroad industry. It's an old style. Let me go to a more progressive company. So I got a job as an industrial engineer at American Airlines.
Wow, still going today.
And I did that. I did that for another year and a half, and that's when I decided it was a total of 2.5 years that I invested in those two companies. I said, no, it's not for me. And I sat back and I said, what do I want to do? And I wanted to do something in business. I didn't know whether I wanted to own my own business, work for somebody else, but I know I wanted to be in business. I had a pretty good head. Obviously I was very energetic and very aggressive. So I sat down actually and with a piece of paper said, okay, if you want to be in business, what do you need to know? I said, well, you got to know a little bit about sales. You got to know a little bit about operations. You got to know a little bit about technology, data processing. So a little bit about finance. And I then took that as a blueprint and I got a first job at, I believe it was, first job after these two jobs at Citibank.
Could you tell us that story?
Citibank, yeah, I went to Citibank, and in those days, again, your audience and you can't fathom, believe it, but the whole world. There was no iPhones, there was no Venmo, there was no. The whole world worked and lived on checks. Everybody wrote checks, check. And banks had huge floors and floors of what they called the check processing department, and they had these huge, massive computers. So anyway, it was part of the operations. So I got a job. Entry job there, and I learned how to work in the operations with a little bit with technology, with the machine, so with the computers, et cetera, and which is very important in life to work with other people. But I learned, I physically, I admitted I knew nothing. So I was there for about a year or so, and then I said, to myself, I said, I've got enough about operations. That's not what I want to do for a living. And I was lucky they transferred me to their IT department. And I said, and I was fortunate enough to be able to kind of almost chart the course that I wanted to pursue. I said I needed to, I want to know how to program, but I didn't want to do the program. I said, I want to know enough so that if I have a team of programmers that I know that they're not kind of BSing me, that I can tell them I want this and this done, and I wanted to know that it can be done. So I was in the IT department for about 6-8 months, and I learned there's an old language. It doesn't even exist today, Fortran. You may or may not have heard it. I learned that language, and I did that for 8 months. And then I said, okay, time to do some sales. And, I was outgoing, and at that time, I spoke English pretty well. So I left and I went to, I got a job at Bank of New York. The Bank of New York, and there I got into the department, excuse me, that sells corporations some of the Bank of New York products that they have, programs that they have in order to better cash management product, to better manage the corporation's business. And I started selling, and I was pretty good at it. And I did it for about a year or so when I said, okay, now it's time to really get a real job, so to speak, although all of them were real jobs. And in those days, again, all of the jobs, there's no LinkedIn and all that stuff. In those days, the way you got a job is you had either the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, which were paper-based newspapers. The last 2 or 3 pages had ads. And the ads basically said, we're looking for a data processing person. These are the qualifications. So there was an ad saying American Express is looking for an assistant treasurer. And I didn't even know what an assistant treasurer was, but they had...
Neither do I, to be honest.
They had about, 5 or 6 bullet points. And I said to myself, okay, I think I can talk my way into that position. And I did. But all through that, you need to understand, and again, it's not me, it sounds very self-serving. I was very driven. I was going to get that job. And once I got the job, I was going to succeed. And that was my beginning at American Express, and the rest of it, we can talk about it, but the rest of it is history. I was there about 14 years.
Yeah, we will definitely get into American Express. But something I was wondering is, we're in so many different industries. You're in, engineering, so many different companies. I feel like for college students, a lot of times it's difficult to hone in and pick, what do you want to do? What do I want my major to be? What is your advice to kids?
Students come to me all the time. They say, Dean Strauss, what should I major in? Should I major in finance? Should I major in strategy and entrepreneurship? First of all, you have to know yourself. Okay, if you're, very laid back and and you're much more comfortable being without too many people around. You certainly don't want to get into a business where you're going to have to interact with hundreds and thousands of people. Although nowadays, in any company, you're going to have to interact. The old days of what we used to call, in accounting, for example, we had a rubber band on your arms, and you used to go, you were an accountant, they put you in a room, they said, okay, do your thing, come out at 5 o'clock and go home. Nowadays,
that's before my time.
that doesn't fly anymore. But you need to know your personality, but you also need to know, just like I thought I was sure I was going to enjoy engineering. You need to accept the fact that you're going to major in something, and it may very well be not be what you want to do. So, but based on your personality, if you like finance, if you like business, if you like entrepreneurship, do you want to, you ask people, do you want to start your own company? You want to work in a small company, big business? You have a sense of what you want to do, but the truth be said, you're not going to know it until you get out to the business world, and you're going to trip once or twice, but that's okay. You're still learning. I learned a lot. The 2.5 years I worked for the engineering for American Airlines and the railroad, I didn't like it, but I learned a lot. I learned how to interact with people. I learned how to work as a team. I learned how to make decisions. I learned what happens, which everybody needs to. What happens if I make the bad decision? I learned how to make sure that, how to take a risk, be a risk taker. And, all those things you learn no matter what business you're in.
Could you mentioned you spent 10 plus years at American Express.
Yeah.
With so many you were working in different sort of groups. Could you take us sort of through those career defining moments and the lessons that you learned?
So, look, let me tell you, I always say, and I'm not trying to be modest, but I guess I am to some extent, anybody, luck is very important in business.
Right.
You need to know that. So, I was a hustler. I worked my rear end off, but there was a bit of luck involved too. So I started in this finance as an assistant treasurer. And it was okay. It wasn't for me. Right away from the beginning, but I wanted to learn, and I wasn't gonna, leave. But again, the first bit, which is terrible to say, was lucky for me. But the first thing, actually, it was the second thing. Then all of a sudden, the American Express, they asked me to take a look at the financial. And to get more involved in the treasury functions, which I really didn't care, but I did it. But what happened, which is the piece that I was just saying, which really was terrible, back in, I don't know what year it was, on a Sunday, actually, there was a plane that went from Belgium to London, and it crashed. And on it was a guy, I don't remember his name, who was head of international finance for the bank. By the way, you're not familiar with American Express had and still has a big bank. It's called American Express International Banking Corporation. And he died. He was on a plane and he died. And Monday morning, I got a call from one of the department heads. Said, "Hey, Mike, we heard you've been here for about a year or so, and you're a very energetic guy, and we'd like to talk to you." Push comes to shove, they asked me to take on his job, which was, sad, obviously, but I jumped into it. I knew nothing about foreign exchange, literally nothing. But I said, I'm going to learn international finance. So here was the first big challenge for me. In those days, the American peso, there were strong rumors that the Mexican peso would devalue. And if it did devalue, it would devalue by 50%, big number. Now, American Express had subsidiaries all over the world and had a big subsidiary in Mexico. In those days, the Mexican local interest rate was 16%. In the U.S., it was 6%. So American Express loaned its subsidiary, I think it was $30 or $40 million. It was on the books in Mexico. Now, as I got this position, I'm in it about 2-3 months, there are very, very, very strong rumors that the Mexican peso will devalue. And if it devalued, we were not hedged or protected or anything, we would lose 15, 20 million, we American Express, which is a lot of money at that time.
Still is a lot of money.
So I in my capacity, was pushing very hard to hedge, which basically is to insure. To insure the bag, it's going to cost insurance money, but we would be insured if it devalues. Although the rumors were strong, but the flip side of it was there were a lot of newspapers saying that it's really not going to happen. Mm-hmm. Now, the person that had to approve the this hedging, because the money would come, was the head of the credit card business. He was a nice Jewish guy, Morris Siegel, about 5'2", very, very successful. Had come from, I think, JCPenney. I mean, he was the president of the division. I was a little peon. I was a assistant director of. Anyway, I was pushing very hard. I came with a proposal. He refused it. Now, I was a little peon, but my position happened to report to the president of American Express. But I was like 17 levels below. And you're bringing back good memories. Anyway, Morris Siegel, I talked to him. He was adamantly against it. It's not going to devalue. And he kind of pushed me away, to the point where he got really nasty. He wouldn't even say hello to me in the elevator.
Oh, man.
He was he didn't want to talk to me.
It's an awkward ride.
But I said to myself, I really believe we've got to do it. And I pushed, and he was told by the president to do it.
Wow.
He did it. 3 weeks later, the Mexican peso devalues by 50%.
God was looking out for you.
And I'm a hero. And to his credit, the next morning he calls me to his office. This big, huge, plush office.
5'2", by the way.
And he says, Mike, I need to apologize to you. Blah 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 blah. I was rude. It was unfair. Thank you very much for pursuing it. And we have this whole conversation. At the end of the conversation, he said, now what can I do for you?
Wow.
I said to
nothing
myself,
else you're doing
I
here.
said, that's an open door now. At that point, I was ready to run a business for, a department, a business or something. I said to him, to be honest with you, I've never run a business. I think I have all the ingredients. I have strong operations background, sales, finance, blah,
good
blah, blah.
looks.
I want to run a business. He said, interestingly enough, timing is everything in life. I have the gold card business. Now, the gold card business then was very small.
Right now, today, it's
huge.
humongous.
And he said, and they were thinking of closing it down.
Wow.
Because in those days, and I don't want to go, we can spend 2 hours, which is fine with me. In those days, the only difference between the gold card and the green, what they call the green card, which is the personal card, was gold. And it was sponsored. In those days, it was sponsored by a local bank. They gave you a 2,000 line of credit. Big deal. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. And the reason people took the gold, anyway, he said, why don't you go in there? He said, I don't know. We may still close it. But the one thing I assure you, go in there, do nothing for 3 months, but really study, come back to me with a report. Should we keep it going or not? And even if you tell me, I want you to be objective, not to keep it going, I assure you I'm going to get you another job here. You're not out of a job. So, I mean, it was a no-brainer. So we went in and spent 3 months, and I had a team. This wasn't only me, so I don't want to. I had the advertising, Ogilvy Mather. I had the team. I had the accounting firm. Everybody. We did a big study. The conclusion was that most of the people that are buying the gold card then, which is no different than why the people buy the platinum card now, is because they wanted to go to a restaurant and pull it out because the waiter or waitress say, "Wow, this guy's got a gold card."
Yeah,
card.
I've done that with one of my friends who's pulled out the gold card.
Yeah, it was a big image thing. So I recommend. So we came back with a whole report saying raise the fee.
Wow.
Add a couple of services, which nobody's going to use, but rationalize that you got a real. Anyway, we went out and it was a huge success. The gold card really built up.
Amazing.
So that was it.
Yeah, I mean, that story has so many themes in there,
That's
so many
true.
things to learn from. But I mean, one thing I really took from that is being ready for your opportunity. Being ready for your opportunity no matter what happens. And the second part of that thing I wanted to say was that kind of the David versus Goliath. You weren't scared against a higher up. You didn't back down. How did you get the courage to do that when you're putting your job, putting yourself on the line?
Well, because to this day, and I tell the students and I tell faculty, what you see is what you get. When I believe in something, I pursue it. And I didn't want to play politics. And I said to I had enough confidence in myself to say that should this not work, I'll get a job someplace else. And I also had enough confidence that I thought with the right team and the right support, I could pull it off. And I didn't, politics. I'm not a good politician. I'm not. That's why I don't work for the government. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I was always persistent in whatever I tried to do, and I always tried to. I mean, I had other situations way after American Express. Look, I took a gamble, and it worked out. I was there 13 years, 14 years, and I was one of the top three EVPs at American Express. I had a shot at the CEO job. I had a shot at it. Not 51%, but more than 40. I had a 50-50 shot at it. But I decided at that time that it was time for me to move on, that I want to do something different. I also decided, and it had nothing to do, by the way, when we get into Judaism, they knew that I was Jewish. They knew that I left early. They knew everything about me. And I have to tell you, there was one time that and in those days, they were really in the senior management. There were 3 Jews. It was me,
Morris.
and two.
That's our guy from, right? The guy that you had the interaction with?
Morris. Morris.
Right.
Yeah, Morris. And and then there was the general counsel was Jewish, Gary Bella.
The lawyer, classic.
Right. But I decided, and there was another thing that I dedicated my life. I did more than today. The what do we call it? Work balance.
Work-life balance.
Work-life
balance.
The classic question.
I did not. I worked, and I have to tell you, I wish one day, and my wife was terrific, and she still is terrific, but I wish that one day she'd say no. I can't tell you how many times, literally, we were packed to go on vacation, and I call her on a Wednesday evening. I say, listen, I just got a call from the CEO. He's called a meeting next Tuesday. When I knew that I didn't have to be there. He wanted me to be there, but if I wasn't there, I said, we're not going on vacation. Cancel the vacation. And she said, okay. So she was very supportive. What I'm saying is, you need a supportive family. She was very, very supportive. I worked, 11, 12 o'clock at night, Motzei Shabbos, on Sundays. I traveled all over the world. There were many. Look, I regret, what I do regret is.
Yeah, so could we get into that?
Sure.
Meaning, so already you're coming in as a frum Jew to where there hasn't been precedent set on sort of what you're going to do, and then you're also trying to climb a little bit and really set your name, and you're a driven person. Like you said, how do you balance that with your family? You said you devoted so much time to your...
Well, I balanced it I'll tell you what I balanced it with, is that I traveled all over the world. I'd leave Saturday night, Sunday, and come back Thursday night or Friday afternoon. But I made it my business, whether I was in Argentina or France or wherever, to try to get back every Shabbos. And I will tell you a quick story that many years later, my 2 sons, and I felt bad because I didn't go to my kids' school,
Sports
teacher,
games.
Right, the
sport
parent-teacher
game.
conferences.
They were parent-teacher conference. They were both, avid sports guys. I didn't do it. My wife did it all. And I afterwards, many years later, I've always regretted. To this day, it bothers me. But many years later, maybe it was 10, 15 years later, it was about 20 years ago. I was just before I came to Yeshiva. I had my own consulting business, and I was consulting for an Israeli-based company. And for whatever reason, the CEO came into New York, and I don't remember the reason, but I wanted him to meet my 2 sons, who were there already in the business world and very, very accomplished. So we had lunch. We had lunch together at a restaurant in Midtown, and one thing led to the other, and we talked about the work balance. And he says, he tells me he has 3 little kids, this Israeli. I said, how do you do it? He says, I work till about 5 o'clock. I go home, I have dinner with my kids, and I go back to the office till 12, 1 o'clock. That's the way I do it. So I'm still with my family, but I still put in 100 hours a week. And I tell him, quite frankly, I said, I regret I didn't do that. I did all this blah, 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 blah. But I came home. No, I didn't say that. And my oldest son jumps in and says, but Abba, you were always home for Shabbos. And believe me, that felt
Right.
good. It felt good. So
Right.
anyway, I don't know if that answers.
I
your
mean,
question.
it brings us right into our next thing we wanted to ask you about Shabbos. I mean, that's for modern Orthodox people who are trying to balance having a corporate job at a bank, at a consulting firm, and also having to tell them, I'm not going to be online for 25 hours.
You could do it, but you got to do it. We talk about the work, the business halacha course. I mean, if you tell your employer at the beginning what your values are and what you're going to do, but you got to stick to them. In other words, you can't take advantage of it.
Right.
You got to be able to put in. So that on Christmas, you work.
Right. Putting in those extra hours.
Those extra hours, and Saturday night, if there's a need, you work. And if you have to go every Sunday into the office, you work. So you have to show your fellow workers that you're not taking advantage of it.
Right.
So it's not as today in today's world it's much different. Today's much easier.
Easier.
Much in my opinion, it's much easier. All the large companies, many Jews in there.
Right.
It's from Jews.
The precedent's been set.
Exactly.
People
kosher
know mostly.
restaurants that they have. I went to Goldman Sachs. I had a lunch with one of their former partners, but an alumni from Syms. And I just went in there. And in fact, he was. I'll give you, as long as we talk about Judaism. So I met him and he always came to Yeshiva University and have his kippah, and we talked business. And then I come. They invited me there for lunch, and he's walking around without his kippah.
Right.
And I knew him well enough. I said, "How come you're not? Are you embarrassed or what?" No. He said, "Dean Strauss. Everybody knows I'm Jewish. Everybody knows that I leave Friday afternoon. Everybody knows that I'm unavailable for 25 hours. Everybody knows that." So I said, "So why are you not wearing a yarmulke?" He had a different perspective, and I'm not sure he's older than one. I respected him. He said, "When I sit around a table, I decided when I first came here that if I sit around a round table in a conference room with 6 other people to talk about a deal, I don't want to be the only one with the yarmulke because I feel that they will look differently at me if I look at you and I know you're wearing a yarmulke."
Right.
That was his prerogative. I
I
respect
have a question for you.
Sure.
Would you wear your yarmulke today if you were still at American Express right now?
Would I wear it? Absolutely.
Did you wear it?
What?
Did you wear it?
At the beginning, no. The first year I
Right.
didn't. But then I didn't wear it the first 2 or 3 years. But then I wore it because there were a couple other people that started wearing it. I mean, there
Right.
were more than those 2 people.
Right.
But I mean, at a lower level.
So when you went into it and you started not to wear
I
your
didn't.
yarmulke,
But they all knew.
right?
They all knew that I was going to leave Friday. They all knew it. I just didn't wear it because in those days you didn't wear it. You didn't wear a
Right.
yarmulke. Jewish people didn't wear a yarmulke.
Could we circle back to American Express, and then eventually your
Sure.
journey to YU and how you ended up becoming the dean?
So, well, it's a long journey. So I left American Express, and I hooked up with over 8 years with private equities, with 3 private equity groups. I decided that I wanted to be more of an entrepreneur, and I was in a financial position I could invest a little bit in companies. So the first one actually was a company, a private equity group that bought a fresh frozen food company, actually in Farmingdale, Long Island.
That's kind of a tongue twister. Fresh frozen fruit.
Fresh frozen food company.
In Farmingdale.
It was about $100 million company, and they had acquired it. That was the first deal, and they brought me in as the CEO. And I did that for about we did it for about a year and a half. The company was sold. Then I went to another private equity group, and I was in a consumer collection business. Basically, you don't pay your credit card. After a while, the bank turns it over to a collection company. It was a collection company.
Okay.
And then I did a technology. I was involved in a technology company. We did 5 deals. So 3 deals we did very, very well financially. The 4th deal I did okay. The 5th deal I got out by the skin of my teeth, which is, I think, a pretty good track record. And I'll tell you, when I started out, and I told you about luck at American Express, so I'll tell you another piece of luck, and I'm very glad to share it with you. So the last company I was struggling. I was there for a year and a half. It turned out that the patents, that we did the due diligence and it wasn't done. It wasn't very kosher. It wasn't 100% what we thought it was. The CEO was a fraud. He was not a doctor. I mean,
Wow.
the founder, I became the CEO. Anyway, I took the company over, and it was really heavy lifting. And no matter what I did, I couldn't. And it had good technology, by the way. Okay, so one day, about 2 years into this thing, I take a trip to Chicago because I'm supposed to meet with somebody who may be interested in investing in the business. And anyway, I had my meeting. I come to the airport at 8 o'clock at night. They tell me the flight was canceled. Bingo. I said, I got to get to New York because I have an 8 o'clock meeting the next day. She says, sorry, no more flights. Next flight is 7 o'clock in the morning. I said, I got to get out here. So it turned out there was a Delta. This was, I remember it was a Delta flight. And she said to me, go to the Delta counter. I went to the Delta counter. They had one seat for 10 o'clock night flight. It was first class. You know, we didn't have any money. And I said, I don't care. My credit card, we're going first class. Now, you go back to my American Express day. I traveled so much, and it was always first class, but with a lot of people, that I got to the point, and everybody wants to talk to everybody, that I was almost, you know, as friendly as I am now, I was almost rude. I went into, I sat in my seat, I opened up a book, whatever I did, but I tried very hard not to talk to the person next to me because I knew.
We were those guys trying to talk to you.
We would be. When they started talking, they talked, and you know, it's an 11-hour flight. You don't want to talk for 11 hours. So anyway, fast forward. I'm sitting next to this guy, and for whatever reason, it's only an hour flight or whatever. I strike a conversation with him, and he said, you know, he has a business. He's in, I don't even remember what business he was in, Chicago. He's in New York. We strike a conversation. At the end, I take in those days, a big business card. I take his business card, I give my business card. I have lunch with him afterward. Anyway, fast forward, 6 months later, he buys my company.
Wow.
Not for a lot of money. I mean, he stole it, but I got out by the skin of my teeth.
Jeez.
But if I didn't talk about luck.
Right.
If my flight wasn't canceled, I didn't sit first class. My tendency is not to speak to him, to ignore him, and I didn't open up a conversation. So
it's a lot of hashgacha pratis.
Right. God was looking out for you. Well, I'll tell you something I kind of wanted to know, kind of along those lines, God helping you out through your business. What do you think the biggest things that Judaism did for you throughout your work experience that kind of, helped you?
The one word I say, believe. I believe, it gave me a real strong, first of all, I feel very strongly that I'm a Jew. I feel very, very, not only good about a Jew, I feel very proud to be a Jew. And I felt very proud to be a Jew in the corporate world. I felt very proud, even though the American Express, the beginning days, there were very few of them. I mean, as I moved on, obviously a private equity group, there were a lot of Jewish people. And then I had my own company for a while. And of course, YU goes without saying. And, I guess maybe it goes back to my roots as an Israeli. And so I've never experienced. Now I know I read and hear and all about the anti-Semitism.
Right.
I'm proud to say I've never experienced it.
It's amazing.
Never ever experienced it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Could you sort of, you said you told us a lot of your story going through the corporate world, and now sort of you've transitioned to, as the Dean of YU, helping people sort of enter that world, those that are pursuing it. What do you think is holding most of the students that you work with back from really landing those dream jobs, especially in a job market right now that's pretty bleak? What do you advise them to do, and what's sort of holding them back?
Well, I think that's your belief. It's pretty bleak. I don't know. Okay, I'm not out there. I'm not out there looking for a job, so I can't. I can't tell. All I can tell you is those people, those students who are smart, bright, energetic, aggressive, and are looking for get a job. They may not get their dream job, but you can get a job. I will tell you that, and I'm going to be brutally honest, which I've always been, here and there, a mom will call me up, a mother or father will say, very upset, my son, it's May, didn't get a job. Your career center doesn't help. This doesn't help. This doesn't help. I spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and if I don't know every student, My answer immediately is, without saying anything, I said, I'd like to meet your son. And inevitably, and of course, I meet the son, and inevitably, I find a reason. Very laid back, very shy, not necessarily a bad student, but not one. You have to be. Look, in business and in school, I tell students. I said with a student about an hour and 2 hours ago. Here it is. What, February? He's graduating. Do you have a job? No. Why? Well, I sent out some letters. Finding a job is a full-time job. You should have started in October looking for a job. There's jobs out there, and people get promoted. There's jobs out there, and if you work very hard, if you hustle, you have the right personality, you can get it. Again, I'm saying it may not be the exact job that you want, but you can get a job. My opinion.
Right, and so, kind of as we close, what takeaways do you have to this audience, whoever may be, college students, younger, older, looking to you as a Jewish professional? What kind of advice and takeaways do you have?
I think the advice is keep pursuing your dreams. Make sure you finish, if you're going to college, university, finish college. Hopefully it's Yeshiva University. Try to get. I'm all for an advanced degree, but you don't have to get nowadays. You don't have to get your MBA or your MS following work, but work very hard and look at getting a job almost as a full-time job. Dedicate a lot of time. And, in order to do that, and I didn't speak about that, but especially at Yeshiva University, you guys know better than I do, time management is critical. You've got to really be very, very mindful of the day and the times and the hours and apportion, your time accordingly, because otherwise you're not going to get anywhere, especially, with going to morning,
the morning programs.
Morning programs in the afternoon and the evening and, night Seder and what have you. And, you're entitled to socialize and what have you. But again, the kind of the bigger answer is that there's a great opportunity for all of you, for all the students out there. A Jewish community is smart. We're smart. We're bright. We've accomplished. We have lots to point to. And don't be embarrassed. Be proud to be a Jew and be proud to go out there and get a job and get the job that you want. And again, if you don't get the exact job that you want, you will get it. Believe me, you will.
We appreciate that, Dean. Before we let you go, the goal of this podcast is to interview guests across so many different industries. You yourself have been across so many different industries. Could you give us a little nugget, something that's specific from your industry that you think applies to every single industry across the business world?
Which industry? I've been so many
I was going to say, let's pick with maybe the most niche one, which maybe most people, our listeners, won't be doing, which is engineering. What maybe you think in engineering applies to every other industry?
Well, engineering, what applies, which is a long time ago, so I forgot what I learned in 4 years of engineering. But engineering, quite clearly, is you need to be very, very focused. You need to be very attentive. You need to be able to work on your own, and you need to be able to prove to others, which, by the way, in any industry, is that you need to show a level of confidence in yourself that what you're selling is what the person or the group that you're selling it to wants to buy. I mean, confidence. Look, I'm a firm believer that you need to be very persistent, have great confidence, believe in yourself, and push forward and push forward, and don't for one moment not believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself, and if you believe in yourself, you'll succeed.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for coming on, Dean. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dean Strauss, everybody.
Thank you so much.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
Oh, yeah, I'll be back.
Thank you.
All right, Dean. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys for tuning in.
What an amazing first episode of the JP Podcast, Hill. How are we going to top that?
Pretty incredible. You know what line really stuck with me, Ben? Is that he said, I'm proud to be a Jew. I was proud. And I think he really showed that throughout his career. Not only did that kind of help him succeed, but it really helped him stay connected to his family, to his values, and something that we can all learn from.
Yeah, exactly. All I know is that I have to start working full time before my first full time job. That you gotta work a full job.
I mean,
before.
you did say the job market's pretty bleak. He didn't like that so much.
Catch us on the next JP podcast. Subscribe, follow, share with your friends. We can't wait to take you along this journey. Thanks for listening.
See you guys soon.